I want to introduce our Supermind Master, Enrique Galicia. So thank you, Enrique, for being here and hope you have a great webinar.
Thank you very much, Hania. I will try to do my best. So let's get started from there. Today's webinar is about streamlining Revit, document creation. And we thought about this topic because most of the common requests goes with document creation. Because it's a process that can be easily automated, and as well it involves a lot of manual work happening sometimes. It depends on how deep you get into using Dynamo or DLLs. So for having everything on a same set, what we're going to do is going to check workflows. That may be useful. And with those, how do those workflows can be aligned to an AI tool. So introducing myself, I'm Director of AI Innovation at Avonlip. I have 98 courses, which will continue growing since we are getting more content about things related with AI, tools, workflows, and other settings. It's already growing, the network, it's now 28,000 students. It's going 30,000, up to hopefully we'll get closer. And then it has like more 15 years of experience about interoperability, applications, workflows, and different consultancy happening with practices and uses with AI. So talking about Avonlip, Avonlip is a consultancy firm that it's happened to have three main core workarounds, which it's like with a presence within like the several locations. And it's specialized in three main segments, which is digital practice, that it becomes on giving consultancy, where it comes about BIM creation, BIM modeling, digital practice, AI-powered BIM tools, BDC management. The second one goes within digital solutions, which involves automation and integration of tools, improvement, any type of workflows that gets automated. And the last track for those, it's the smart digital twins, which involve the mixture between IoT, BIM, and artificial intelligence with using of dashboards and things that are developed upon those. Then some reference of Avonlip's clients, that are like the ones that are seen there, like Y, Tesla, where Malcolm, Proto Homes, just for mention a few of them. So on our agenda, we're going to review automations gone by Dynamo, some Revit API automations, and how will those can get leveraged so that they can get together upon AI-powered tools. So for this webinar, I have separated the resources. And for the first time, we're opening a Discord channel. So if you haven't been familiar with Discord, it's a platform where we can have a direct communication upon access and things that are happening with our applications. And the main idea is to have a deeper connection so that we can just present, have things around, and work it. So I'm just going to share that link on the chat. I will repost it later on if there were more people being called upon. And all of these codes are accessible so that if you see any workflow and you want to test it, you want to review it, you can have access to that one. The aim here is to try to expose it that way it can be helping on the document creation process. So some references are courses about how to create documents in Revit, Dynamo working for quantity takeoffs, Dynamo working with Dynamo Player. Then we have some things about outputs going within some filtering creation images, creating it for procurement, for getting other objects. So for getting as well like generating numbers for MAP or things that might need to have like very specific on a tag on a production schedule. Things that go on the basics of using the Revit API for document creation, for views, filters, and as well for C# Revit tree creation, so that case it's managing tools and things that can be used. So within that link, you can find there all these resources, you can subscribe, and they are already open so that you can just use it and learn it from there. So let's review the process. So I divided this webinar into 5 main topics, which will be the core of doing documentation. And within that one, it refers when you're creating a type of view, specifically talking on Revit, is creating a view. Creating a view will depend on which are the view templates you're using or if it has specific filters. So every single time you're creating a view, you're creating a new set of glasses that will show you through the model and how do you do that so that it becomes part of your documentation process. So either you are creating blueprints or you are getting into some sort of procurement process, or you're using it for reviewing, you're using it for creating more model. One of those is like, how do you manage your view creation, your visibility? The second one goes with annotations and dimensions. That means once you have that being created, how do you're going to present it so that you have annotations, you have dimensions, tags, if you're having it from a specific characteristics of a shared parameter, or if it's being drawn just on that specific view. The third one will be things that are not related to the model, but are complementary, such as when you're creating detail items, creating legends, creating visibility elements that might not be completely or might be related to the model, but you also need to put it because there are things that are part of your blueprint creation. The fourth one will be schedules or things that go with management upon the file. And lastly, the sheet assembly. That is where all the things come together and work around. So just reviewing those on a Dynamo workflow. On the Dynamo workflow, we have several nodes that will help us to aim that improvement. If we're trying to do those on a manual set, just gonna press play, If doing it by manual, I mean, it depends a lot within the standards, and if you have already like used it a lot. If you don't have good standards or you don't have a process that it's already known where you want to achieve, it's going to become very complicated to try to automate it, unless it's an automation for doing some exploration about how do you want to see the data, how do you want it to be visible. So I'm just presenting on this one that most of the common uses of that might be that you want to check the model, you do want to do some quality checks, you want to transform within the parameters to know what's the information you're looking at. And perhaps it will depend on how deep it can go, because in this sample is particularly looking for a parameter that it's been named like that. So then therefore I wanted to create some filters. If the filters are created very fast, then I can use it. So that can also lead me to, okay, how do I want to change it? And if I'm using Dynamo, I do not necessarily need to do it as a standard, but it can also be done by a parameter I want to change, such as the type of pattern, the type of colors, the parameter I'm querying, the data I want to review. And that can help us explore that if we're just using it for modeling, or if we're just using it as well for documenting, presenting, if we wanted that to be a shared component. And within Dynamo, starting this process of automation on a general experience, the Dynamo can be very easy to go on a process of creation of the tool. Therefore, it wouldn't be the best recommended for production. So I will suggest going on that workflow for filters or view creation. It's good for seeing how it works, but then it needs to go DLL so that it become very powerful on that case, and it can be shared upon the team. So if there's any questions in the middle, just please throw it on the chat, and I will be more than happy to include it within those. Then second one about tagging. Basically, it goes within an element being placed on a coordinate, and as well an element being taken off so that it knows a reference for creating the dimensions. We need to think it that when we're trying to automate, the computer goes blind because it's not the same thing. We cannot just see the object and place it, but rather than that, we need to tell how on that process we can review the information we want to check. How do we want it to create some elements, some tags, some annotations on that specific view. And within that one, how we're going to get a coordinate that goes close to that. So probably wouldn't be a workflow that everybody will do it, but having it being created can dramatically increase time or an efficiency on the creation of documents. Yeah, that's a sample using it for a lot of elements being displayed there, and as well using just a node of independent tag or elements being in the middle. It's good enough for that to happen and to be created on a location specific. Then therefore, you will also need to have some arrangement, because probably creating the tags is not the issue, but when it comes to seeing the view and having on a nicely seen way of describing it, it will require to find out where is the space each tag is taking, and then having some other type of algorithm so that it goes in the middle, align, or setting other things around. Then about drafting views and legends, we have it goes with all the elements that are details that are 2D, the things that we do not necessarily include on our models because it not all the times need to have that deeper of detail. But what we can do within Dynamo is getting things extracted by lines, recreating the lines and recreating it on a view so that it can become a detail. And as well from that, if we have a detail, we can also extract it. Even though we can just transfer views from one project to another project, it may be useful to have it from a general database of documents so that it can be read. And in that case, we can just insert it on our actual document. Just get it more someone else. Yes, from there. Good. So there's this other sample that we want to create legends, and legends come into the realm as well of being as a 2D drawing being placed within patterns between using families of color fields, or also having like a label type of element. And within Dynamo, we can create those so that they can become automated. So in that sample, we're just creating like a legend being called upon the data we have on the file. And as well, from the filter it was created, it's also creating the legend, and then the legend can go forward. Then, yeah. Then we have, from the scheduling perspective.
No.
Yep, is there? All right then. So if there's any question, just, yeah.
Me right now. Cake stuff ready for tomorrow.
Sorry, I didn't get you. It's somebody speaking. Okay, just I will continue. If there's any questions, just, or you can also raise your hand, and then I can know that. So from the scheduling perspective, we're extracting information for managing. Mostly it becomes when you want to get some quantities, but also you can use it to check parameters. That will be like your not blinded. If you want to see that something is being colored around. And it will depend on the parameters, but we all know that it can become very messy because on that matter, if you have too many shared parameters and then you're using it for different things, how will you manage to have it lower elements, and how would you manage so that they become consistent? And the last one is within the views and sheet control. Views and sheet control depends on how do we get the elements on a specific location. We have a library of views. We have a library of documents we want it to be addressed upon a specific location. And therefore, if we create or we contribute to this reading or knowing, like we have already have this format, and within that format, we can know where are the coordinates they need to be tackled, how they need to be created. Even though using Dynamo or Dynamo Player, we can be having like all the views that has with these containing elements just be created on these spots, having different configs. It fits, it doesn't fit, then it creates documents. So I will say those 5 components get together on a process of automation, and it will depend specifically within each particular use, because there might be cases that prefabrication documents go deeper, or blueprints, or within construction, or for architectural detailing. Now, going to second part of this webinar, we have the DLL workflows. Particularly, things we can do on Dynamo can be replicated on the DLL. Nevertheless, things that go more geometrical might get some tricky workarounds, so that in that case, we know that geometry is being taken care of. So the same sample running, but then running from just code, it will make it like at least from 5 to 10 times faster running it. And the good thing about that one is that it's very rare to fail compared to Dynamo, because in that case, we know specifically what we want to achieve and how we're going to read parameters, things, and elements. Complicated part from this one is that because it's not graphical, you would require the C# experience, and as well within that one, how do you read those so that they get integrated? So in this case, we're seeing just like some reviews within the code, creating, extracting levels so that when it's running as a create sample views, it's just creating a duplicate, just creating a particular element. And within that one, the speed comes very fast. So this is these videos are references from the ones that are already on the starting of the webinar, I will just post again the Discord channel so that any questions or any particular workflow can be just reviewed again or being queried. Yeah, I think from that. Yeah, so as well, it's can be created from particular conditions, particular parameters, getting it from a geometry perspective, doing an intersection. So very flexible, because if it's open for things to be connected upon the possibilities of Revit or the ones we have already tested on Dynamo, it's easier to just export it or make it grow for the workflow creation. The other sample is annotation tagging, the same capabilities. The only thing we need to be taking care when it becomes DLL, it's that we need to take care of the geometry on where it's going to be created on the view, so that in that case, it works around. So a lot of technical things in between when it's creating an object, because we still need to care about the family, how we get the annotation, how we get the details, so that they can be placed properly on the spot they belong, and that way they can go together. As well, within dimensions, we have the object, we have the references, and it will vary on depending how the view is being called. Because if it's a three-dimensional or if it's two-dimensional, the parameters change, but it's still the same logic apply. If it's very clear, like, yeah, we want to see something like this type of views, this type of elements being annotated like this, the process gets automated, and once it's automated, then we're heading up on for the AI use. So I'm just gonna continue with this one. This is drafting views and legends. Yeah, some samples of code being created there within the different object, creating lines, creating annotations. Then if we have a format, we can also get advantages, and I will recommend in this case the use of dictionaries using JSON files, because that way we have a config that we can run it through a tool that it will reply. We'll see some other things about that one in a moment. Then as well, schedule creation, very straightforward within if we know what we want to extract. So it will just depend there if we're having filters, we want to sort it out, we wanted to group it on a particular specific element. And within that, what's the production result we want to look at? Because if we're just using it for managing, probably schedules might be good on the project, but not within the complete file when we're documenting it. So probably we can use other strategies to have visibility, such as having overrides, having views, having any other type of form that will tell us how is that one working. And within those responses, then we can just craft a different solution. And lastly, within the views and sheets, what we're doing here is that, yeah, just go from there. So within the views from sheets as well, we will need to have families of title blocks, but the configs we got from a specific file where it goes coordinates, when it becomes this type of size, they can be replied, so that then we can just use it and have it like, okay, just find from these objects what's required, so that we can call it from here and there. So you can just post it. I'm very aware of those happening. If it's not, I will just continue. So the third part of this webinar is talking about commercial AI solutions, and this is when it becomes interesting. So knowing that we already know our processes, we have already our standards. Now we already have about our automation, so things that might get automated. And as well, if you get in any part of that process and we can help you, that's part of as well of the webinar, so that the gates is open, so that that can happen, that can become an improvement, and that can keep on running. So for the commercial approaches of AI solutions, there are a lot of solutions going within AI. And the way we wanted to scope it is like, yeah, this is samples of applications that are doing documentation. So it's construction documents, creating generation, dimensions, placement, sheet creation. So most commonly uses goes around that one, but as well, even though it might be very democratic upon how the tool is working, but I would suggest that in this case, the best it goes aligned to the standards and the way of using and the visibility, that's the way we can handle the model better. So some other considerations about the AI pattern is that we need to validate to where the data training is coming from, how we're giving information properly to the AI so that it understands how it works. Then as well, like if we have clear definitions of data sources, if we're storing our own data, if we're teaching the model so that it reads from our standard approach. It needs to have an incremental relational connection so that we test it, we run it, it's not appropriate result, and then we call it back again. It needs to improve over time so that it's not going to stay the same way. And as well, I will say that with that, the process of being the standards and the creation keeps on running from there. It needs to have privacy protection, and the infrastructure will get nurtured because you can start with some elemental models that are very basic, but then it needs to grow within how it responds to new things. So then talking a little about Andiamo. Andiamo is Avanlip's product that it's the BDC chatbot working around, and all the integrations we're doing within the API running or the DLLs are aiming towards the use of Andiamo. As well within the Discord, I think you can find there that it's also a forum about Andiamo specifically, and there's also one about Mirar. So I will suggest from there, it can be a quite open channel if you want to post some questions, some regards or things around it. Andiamo is available through our website, so you can download it and test it. And there are some samples here within the use of Andiamo, like you can write questions and it will answer you within the content you're looking upon, because it's like Revit aligned and within the things it can read. So if it doesn't know, it's telling you around it, and we have some video about Andiamo. So basic uses go from that, from reading files, from being connected. So creating a chat, adding files, adding PDFs, documents, XML, CSV. For querying it or for having some information. So practical applications, thank you for the comment. Justin, Andiamo is Italian for hurry up. I like the tool name, it's great. So some practical applications that go from the documentation tasks, these automation tasks to be controlled so that we have view creation, filter creation, doing annotations tasks and things around it. Recommend some missing elements on views, also for quality checkups. Because within that one, if we already know which are the data sets we're creating on our models, then we can also review, like, if this view is similar to this other view, should it be like, what's missing there? If we're missing some tags, some annotations, some other settings. We have a question that says, like, what kind of data sets you use for training? It's also possible to customize data sets you provide. So as the training the AI, your own standards. Yes, I mean, within the type of process, Andiamo, it's getting like supported so that the data, I mean, one of the projects is the data extraction. The data extraction within will take information you have on the Revit model so that it's saved on dictionaries on your own services that can be local or can be database. And within those, that can nurture the data sets for Andiamo to work. So as far as now, it's like the connection in between general democratic information happening directly on Andiamo, but for the future, the extraction of that data can gather it to be privacy protected. So I hope that answers the question, Shafak. Then other sample we have is transform view and analyze content. Yeah, by multiple creation of filter views so that we can have a lot of things how we can be working around. Then improving tagging and dimensions, looking upon like, oh, this view has like things being overlapped. How do we manage to ensure that they are on the settings? Ensure detailed consistency so that if you're reading from database, if you're reading from other objects, which will be the related ones, and getting from that context, how the structure of semantics can work around so that you can take it from there. And replicating sheet instructions that will be related to the datasets creation of, if you have already created like a lot of models within your specific structure, then you can extract those patterns and then be recommended through the AI, because in that case, the patterns can be replied, right? Like can be read it from them. So also some other we have other questions. How large and consistent do those data sets be? I mean, within the information of doing automation processes is not necessary to be that big because it's mostly related to the cases that you will have. You will have less options the less you're training the model or the less you're having those data sets to be queried. If it goes deeper within more information, it will get more consistent or more specific type of solution. Then that's for, yeah, then for Moses Scott, current version of Andiamo can query open Revit file. The current version of Andiamo, it's just at this point is getting connections within automations so that the avant-lib set of tools that will be delivered soon can be called upon from Andiamo. Then next steps from that one is that when we're getting extracts, you're creating your own datasets models upon your computer and therefore it can be queried. But I mean, that's still on the road path. And I will suggest within that to be subscribed on the Discord because within that question being pointed out, it can also be nurtured, can be like better brainstorm it so that in that case it suits particular needs and as well it will just be working around. So the way Andiamo runs with some automation tasks is like, this is very basic steps that we need to consider. Is like the more efficient it goes with artificial intelligence at this point, talking about Andiamo goes within the semantics being very clear because we can read commands happening. And specifically on those, we need to define that it's an automated process. This will be like type of recipe going upon an AI or a chatbot understanding what do you want to achieve so that it keeps on growing. So we need to define it an automated process. Then the next step will be how the prompt development is going to work. Like how is the tool going to be called so that it doesn't get confusing. So that when you're asking like, hey, run like we did on the previous webinar, that we wanted to do some clash between structure and MEP, right? Like how Andiamo will know that you want to run a tool? Well, it depends on how the context of that phrase is being taken care, so that it knows like on the description that you're talking about running command when you call about clashes. And then the word clash becomes something pointed out so that the prompt can read it. Then, so we need to have description parameters and commands, which is the instruction that is going to rule within which parameters, and if they're missing, how it's going to answer question us back. So that is not that the dictionary is being already called, but it could keep on growing on that case. And within the parameters, if we want to duplicate, if we need to have the category, we want to make it very specific for something that replies a lot, how do it get connected? Then connected to the Andiamo tool definition. So within that process, at this point is getting on the exploratory phase within the commands being run upon the basic demographic tool, but then it can also get expanded so that it can keep on adding tools or becoming much more dynamic, and lastly running from Andiamo. So I mean, this case, just have it this sample that was the previous one we see on the last webinar. That is when you say like, yeah, get clashes between structure. Yeah, I think it's going slower than my speech. Structure and MEP. Yeah, and it says like, okay, I'm running class protocol, I'm running the tool class protocol finalize, and then it's giving us the tool being run so that it's calling the DLL and the DLL is calling back. So my beans might look very simple within that type of reading and writing, but behind it is just having all the consistency so that the tools can be repeated. Yep. So additional practical applications within technical knowledge, troubleshooting, consulting and research, checking standards, getting mixed language interactions, changing languages, interpreting model conflict report analysis. Within tasks auto runs, and if it already knows what happens, if we can just reply it so that it keep on working the same way, modify, monitoring model changes, predicting model errors, recommended steps and actions, and construction of lifecycle and retrieval. So some tech stack from there is like within Andiamo, we're using a RevitNet framework 4.8, Revit API, the WPF, a model view control pattern, and as well within some open source commercial models within the so that they can get connected and they can read the answer, and then as well being supported within the data sets you are creating. This is just a sample approach. We some of the testers. So in this case, this is a sample approach using OpenAI and GraphQL. This sample, what it's doing is like enabling the Revit API through external API with the GraphQL. So when the query goes to OpenAI, OpenAI send it to GraphQL, GraphQL send it to Revit, and then within that response being reinterpreted. So that is giving us a complete answer by using some tool that we do not develop. But I mean, in this case, it will depend on the particular use, particularly within this one. It's very open to solve the problem, but it will take time because it's having like 4 transactions happening at the same time, right? Like it's having the query becoming an instruction, then the instruction becoming to the model, then the model having it back and then reading it so that it becomes back into the formal language. So just having that reference. Yeah, and also exploratory commands within the standards becoming part of the creation. So if within the workflow, if it's already reading the information, how does that one will become the patterns it will require for creating a template, creating title block, a type of sheet creation, and also on the view templates in the middle, right? Like, so, I mean, the possibilities are quite open in this realm because it depends on how you require documentation to be taken care of. So within this one is like getting from the sections from a PDF data that it can be pulled upon different files or different views. And I think with that one, I will conclude our webinar. If you have any questions before we close the session, more than happy to answer for it. And yeah, the next webinar will be around 4D sequencing, streamlining Revit and Navisworks on April 18. So it says a messaging limitation within the assistance and within the integration process. Yeah, I mean, it depends within the service and depending it goes within a vectorized type of database, because when it becomes very technical, it might get very complicated, but yeah, it goes within very specific. I would say that it always is recommended to have a pre-process when you're sending a message so that the message already knows just the things it needs to know, and then it goes being processed to the language model. So when it connects to other platform services, yeah, it will depend on how you're getting or which data you're getting. Within the data exchange protocol of Autodesk, might also be improved on that. I hope that answers the question, Shafak.
Meanwhile, everyone asks something else. I really like to encourage, as Enrique says, that you subscribe to our Discord channel, because when you ask a question or you suggest something that maybe we don't have it right now, our technology team already passed the message, and we are trying to develop as faster and as an important is to you. So yeah, I really recommend those. And if you have any questions, you can continue writing in the chat something to Enrique.
Yeah. So, I mean, this webinar is going to be as well on our YouTube channel, and we will be updating some other references and other workflows. I will say that interaction can help aim the best efforts so that more tools are available and more results can be useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Enrique. I think we don't have any more questions, but if you have, don't hesitate to write us, write to Enrique or to the social media Discord channel. Yes. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and we hope to see you soon on April 18th.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.